Reddit, what's the harshest thing you've heard a child say, with complete obliviousness to how harsh it is? Mom, come give me a hug. 3-year-old child, no. Double quote. Mom, AWW, if you don't give me a hug I'm going to cry. Double quote. Child, cry a little bit then. Double quote. My 5-year-old daughter asked how our pregnant neighbor's baby was going to get out and I gave her a brief, but factual, explanation. She was surprised that something so big could pop out of someplace so small. And I confirmed her suspicion that childbirth, including hers, was painful. She shook her head sympathetically and said, well, it's too bad babies don't come out your butt. Because yours is so big it wouldn't hurt at all. Double quote. Self-repost. But perfect for this topic. We were taking group photos. Me, my husband and his 2 kids. We all posed for a few. Then my 8-year-old stepson says, okay, now let's take some with just the family. Ouch. My stepmom would always take photos of all of the whole family and then one without me and my brother. The ones of all of us would go in books and the ones of just them would go on the wall. What the fuck? Used to work as a cashier at a pharmacy. Little girl comes up and says, what's wrong with your face? You look like a monster. Born with cleft lip and palate. When I was about 2 years old, my parents took me to visit my grandparents on my mom's side. My grandfather had a black friend. And I, growing up in the Southwest, didn't have a lot of experience with African Americans. He was being super nice and friendly and shook my hand. Apparently I acted horrified when he touched my hand and I tried to wipe off on my dad's pants after he shook it. When I was 10, our black family friend helped us move. He lifted weights so he was able to carry heavy boxes and furniture with ease. Completely forgetting the color of his skin and thinking I was funny, I said, you would make a great slave for our family. My mother's face went white and I was promptly sent to my room. There's no AC at my place in the middle of a sweltering South Carolina summer, but my 4-year-old goddaughter Silly wants to have a friend over. Her mom says the house is too messy for company. Silly asks if we can clean up, but her mom says it's too hot to clean. Silly looks around the house for a moment, saunters up and puts her hand on the vacuum in the corner and says, just as haughty as you please. This don't burn me. Double quote. Oh man, have I got one for this. When I was about 5 or 6, me and my mate were playing around outside my front gate. Can't remember what we were doing. Probably being pains in the ass. Anyway, I used to live next door to a really nice guy. A family friend and an all-round good guy. But he happened to be fat. Now this certain day, me and my friend are, like I said, making nuisances of ourselves. When this guy comes home, he gets out of his car and as he's about to say, hello Ray Boogs, how are you? Like he normally would, my friend pipes up and says, you are a fat man. It wasn't said viciously. Just more of a statement of what he saw. It was awful. I went back indoors after that. And remember being told severely by my parents. I still feel bad about it now when I think about it. Not harsh so much as horribly awkward. But my cousin, when he was super young, was over for Thanksgiving with my aunt and uncle, his parents. At dinner, we usually give thanks for people being in our lives, etc. He really wanted to add in. So when everyone was done giving thanks, he said, and I quote, I'm thankful for white people. Double quote. He clearly did not understand what he was saying. And my aunt's mom was so embarrassed and started apologizing for him. He's since become pretty awesome now that he's a high schooler. But man, the things he said as a kid. When I was a little kid, I grew up around a family who did not have much of a filter. One day another kid really pissed me off and at dinner I said, he is such a little bastard. Little did I know he really did not know his father. And I learned later that his dad was in jail for child pornography. I felt really bad because for some reason the fact I called him that always stuck in my head. My family has an old family friend. I suppose he's more like my step-great-grandpa by marriage. He's old. Real old. He's also beginning to get senile. My cousin's little boy. He's about 5 years old. Went up to my grandpa while he was struggling to get down the stairs and said, "Whoa. You're a dead man." He did the same thing a couple days later when we saw him again. No fucks given by the dead man. My friend's little brother said you're a guy to a female friend who doesn't necessarily dress like a traditional girl. It was pretty awkward. Growing up, my family would pray before eating our meals together at the table. One night, little me was asked to lead prayer. Alright then. Instead of thanking God for the food on the table, I instead said, "Thank you God for giving me a fat mommy." In my little brain this didn't seem mean or cruel. I was truly thankful for my mother. My mom on the other hand left dinner to go cry in the shower. I called a lady a witch one day at the grocery store when I was little. She had black hair pulled back in a bun and was wearing all black clothes. And she looked mean. I said, "Mommy, look at the witch." Apparently loud enough that everyone around could hear. What makes it even worse is that this was a very small town. Population around 1,000 people. So my mom knew the lady. It wasn't like it was someone we weren't ever going to see again. When on a visit to see my 6-year-old grandson after 3 years apart, he says, "Grammy, I thought you were longer." "No. I've been this height since high school." "Well, not longer then. I mean not as wide. Why don't you go play in your room for a while?" Double quote. My then 3-year-old cousin commented during Thanksgiving dinner one year that she had gone to the dentist earlier that day. When asked by her mother what the dentist did, she replied, "He looked at my pee-pee." The dentist was actually a pediatrician and my cousin had a urinary tract infection that week. She got several minutes of laughter out of the table for that one and was absolutely perplexed as to why. My brother and our friends always rag on each other. On this particular day, it was Matt's turn. I don't remember what he was doing, but my little sister, 5, joins in with Matt. "Why don't you do us all a favor and die? You could spread the awkward with a butter knife." My son and his friends had a phase of cursing in light ways when they were around 3, 1/2. They would say things like "your poo-poo." Germans love fecal cursing. When one of his friends was picked up from kindergarten by his black dad, another friend said to the father, "Your chocolate poo-poo." His mother died of shame. They're in no way racist, but there's simply no way you can explain something like that. Okay, so I was babysitting this little kid, above 5 or 6. And he comes up to me and puts his ear on my stomach. Him. "When's the baby due?" Double quote. Me. "Honey, I'm not pregnant." Double quote. Him. "Oh well, mommy was that big when she had a baby." Double quote. Ouch. I told him to go play video games. While throwing a tantrum, my 4-year-old yelled, "I don't like you, daddy. No one likes you." Also, while driving him to school, we drove past a cemetery. He asked what it was and I briefly explained it. To which he replied, "Oh, I wish I could die, daddy." This is something I did as a small child. My mom was in the sugary cereal aisle with me in the cart. I tried grabbing the cereal I wanted and she wouldn't let me. So I apparently screamed at the top of my lungs, "No, mommy. Don't hit me again." Instead of the cereal, my mom grabbed my 3-year-old self and my older sister and left the store. When I was 6-ish, my grandmother was a seamstress and did alterations for people and make strange people's clothes look nice. She was old and wrinkled and I always saw her ironing. On one visit I asked her why she doesn't iron the wrinkles out of her face. My little sister was playing with this gigantic Curious George stuffed animal at the public library, and when this black boy, around her age, tried to play with the toy, she said, "You can't play on this because you're brown." Cue his mother screaming at my mother, calling her a racist. Needless to say, we left the library as fast as we could. I promise my family is not racist. I remember when I was little, my dad was at a truck stop. He was a truck driver and was arguing with other truckers and I walked up. I was like 4 and a half, 5-ish. and yelled, "Hey fuckface, why don't you walk your ugly fat ass over to your truck and drive away, you fucking asswipe." All my dad could do was laugh, and he still laughs when he tells me the story how I had a total trucker's mouth as a kid. I used to work as a lifeguard at an upscale athletic club. One day I was guarding when some kids came in to swim. They were talking to me, asking a bunch of questions the way kids do. They were telling me how they were going to Hawaii in X days. I said, "Well, that sounds like fun. I'd like to go." They said, "Well, just buy our ticket then." I said back, "I don't have the money for that." That's when one of the little girls pointed at me and said, "That's because you're uneducated." Damn kid. Thanks a lot. We were waiting for a table at a restaurant when my 3-year-old asked, "Why does that guy have boobies?" I looked up and made the most awkward eye contact ever with a very hefty gentleman who obviously overheard. I know he didn't ask that question to be mean or hurtful. Regardless, I pulled him aside to explain how his words could make someone else feel. I reminded him that everyone is different. When we finally got a table, guess who was seated right next to us? The guy. I give my son the "I'll remember our talk" look. About halfway through dinner, my son says to the guy, "I'm really sorry if I said something mean. I didn't mean it." The man smiles, says it's okay, and gives me a nice nod. Proudest parenting moment ever. And then I hear, "Having boobies isn't a bad thing. My mommy has really big boobies, way bigger than yours." Damn it. About a month ago, I went to a guy's house to have a console modded. When I walked in the door, his 3-year-old daughter shouted, "Mommy, is that Jesus?" They had at least 3 framed pictures of blonde-haired, blue-eyed Jesus right behind me. I'm black. A week later I'm back over there, and the same little girl loudly whispers to her 5-year-old brother, "It's not Jesus, it's Lord Shinma." Double quote. This happened just a few weeks ago. I was driving my son and his friends to a birthday party. One of the kids in the backseat had just gotten home from a DR appointment and was explaining to the others what a dermatologist is. One of the other kids asked him why he needed a skin DR and that he had never been to a dermatologist. The first kid looks the second one dead in the eye and says to him, "Hope you enjoy your skin cancer." A few months ago I lived in my mother's living room in a 1-room apartment. One day I under my blanket masturbating and she comes out, so I have to stop for a minute. She comes over to me and is like kissing my head and shit, so I'm like, "Mom, please go away," she said. You know what? Okay, I'll go away. She killed herself the next night. I just fucking wish I could have ignored being horny for a minute and let her kiss my head. And told her I love her instead. It'll get buried, but whatever. This happened shortly after I'd recovered from chickenpox. My mom had gone grocery shopping and taken me along. Anyways, we were checking out and the cashier had bad acne. I looked at him and said, "Look, mommy, he has chickenpox. Just like me." My mom, trying to avoid making a scene, ignored me. So I, assuming she just hadn't heard me, said it again, louder. I feel terrible now. This will never be seen, but before my mom and her ex-husband got married, we were in New Jersey to be with his family. I was about 6. And I remember when we were just doing touristy things, there were a lot of women dressed up flamboyantly. At one point I said to my mum, "Wow mum, that lady is much prettier than you." Double quote. They then told me it was a man dressed up as a female. And that's the story of how I Met Your Mother learned of drag queens. That was also my first and hopefully not last drag parade. Not positive this counts, but I was at a grocery store around Christmas with my mom. I was about 23 at the time, and we were waiting in line to check out. There was a woman and a little girl around 5 or 6 in front of us. The little girl kept putting a candy bar in the shopping cart, and the mom would put it back and say no. This went on a few times, and each time the little girl kept getting angrier. Finally she screamed at the top of her lungs, "You buy me candy or I'm telling grandma I saw you with daddy's wee wee in your mouth." The woman grabbed the girl, left her overflowing cart, and got out of there like a lightning bolt. As soon as she left, the crowded store erupted in laughter. My dad used to take me hunting when I was little, 6 or 7. We always went. But of recent I could tell he was losing interest. I always thought hunting was awesome. But I at the time had recently been going to Bible school and was learning the right and wrongs according to the Lutheran faith. Anyhow, I began contemplating that if it was wrong to kill a human. And we are animals after all. Is it wrong to kill an animal? So I asked my father that as we were walking out to the tree stand. He stopped dead in his tracks. He told me he had never thought about it before. And we walked back to his truck. Although I didn't realize it at the time. I completely flabbergasted my dad when I proposed a question. He has admitted to me that if not for me saying something that day, he may have never thought about it any other way. And would have continued hunting. The night before my sister's wedding, the whole family, both her side and my brother-in-laws, and the wedding party went out to dinner. Around that time, my other older sister just found out she was pregnant with her second child. So there was talk about that. I was in the bathroom with my friend's 5-year-old and we were talking about the baby. She turns to me and asks, "Are you having a baby too?" Thinking it was just because we were talking about it, I was like, nope. She looks at me and says, "Well, it looks like you're gonna have one." I nearly died. I laughed so hard. Her mom felt terrible though. Hahaha. Close bracket. I was in 5th grade and we had kindergarten buddies that we would read to and play with every once in a while. One time my buddy came into our classroom and said to our obviously very overweight teacher, "You're looking fat today." Her face turned bright red. A bunch of my peers laughed but I felt too embarrassed for her to laugh. At my wedding I asked my uncle to read something during the ceremony. My uncle is somewhat overweight and as he was climbing the stairs to the podium, I hear my niece say quite loudly behind me in the quiet church, "He's fat." Double quote. There is no way my uncle and everyone else in the church didn't hear that. I felt terrible for him. When I was 13 I was babysitting a 6-year-old and my friend stopped by to drop off something for school. I introduced them and he said, "Oh look. She's going to have a baby just like mommy." His mother was pregnant, my friend was fat. She ended up with an eating disorder, not sure if this contributed at all. After my parents got divorced I was living with my dad. When I was about 7 my dad had this girlfriend who was actually really nice and tried very hard to not make me hate her. It didn't keep me from telling her, "You're only nice to me because you like my dad." Still feel bad about that. Apparently, one time when I was much younger, around potty training age, I followed my mom into the bathroom. Having just learned to sit on the toilet myself, and seeing her do it, I asked mommy, "Why do you hang over the edge of the toilet seat?" Double quote. Now that I'm older, and also cursed with big hips and thighs, she loves recalling this story. When I was in 6th grade, one of my teachers passed away from a brain aneurysm. We were all very surprised because there was no warning whatsoever. I went to a private school with only about 20 kids in my class. So for the day we were able to walk around the school and grieve. Well, I, being the joker I am, tried to cheer everybody up by walking into a room full of my mourning friends and ask who died. Just an innocent comment that my mental filter didn't quite process. My daughter, age 5. We walk into a public restroom. The variety that has small stalls. While in there, a rather, large woman entered a stall. My daughter got startled and literally screamed, "Mom, I stop her, she doesn't fit, she's going to get stuck." Double quote. Same kid after grandma left for the weekend. My daughter seemed a little bummed. I asked her, "Oh, sweetie, do you miss grandma?" And she says, "No, I just miss her iPad." So I say, "But you miss grandma too, right?" And she replies, "No, never. She talks too much and I don't like what she says." Double quote. My nephew at age 5 on the phone with his mom while we were camping. His mom says, "I miss you, honey. Do you miss me?" The kid says, "No, mommy. I just want the toy you are going to get me when I come home. Double quote. My cousin's kid when we took him to the golf course for the first time. My cousin was having a bad round. Around hole 5 or 6 his kid yells out, "Hit him like Kerry 23 and Kerry 23's dad." My cousin proceeds to shank it about 100 yards. His kid then says, "You're not any good at this game, daddy." He then proceeds to make these sort of comments for the rest of the 18 holes. "That was a par 4, daddy. What did you get? 8. Whoa. That's way too many, daddy. That was a par 3, daddy. I couldn't even count how many you did. Why do you like the trees so much?" Double quote. At the end of the round, my daddy likes playing in the sand, but he's not very good at the putting. It was just all day long. My cousin was pretty new to the game. The rest of us weren't. Golf can be a really frustrating game to learn, but having the world's most vicious caddy doesn't help. I'm a middle school teacher and the classes get let out a little early from the lunchroom as a means of easing traffic in the hallways. One of my students came up to the door before the bell had rung to end that period and asked if they could come in. I told them to wait until the bell rang and she responded with, "That mean mister, I guess you're forever alone." I only realized later on she said it because I was sitting alone in the classroom when they came up and not because I'm 34, single, childless, and girlfriend free. It was like she had looked into my soul and discovered my weakness. I once asked my grandmother, who has severe osteoporosis, "Grandma, why do you look like the Hunchback of Notre Dame?" My mother almost killed me on the spot, but my grandma calmly explained that I would end up like that if I didn't drink my milk. She turned it right back around on me and scarred me for life. Although childhood I insisted that I drink milk with every meal. In the summer, I was at some tourist attraction with family. My 3-year-old cousin walked past an obese woman, stopped, turned around, and asked her why she was so fat. As my gran tried to drag her away without making it even more awkward, my wee cousin loudly tried to comprehend the woman's size. "But why is she so fat? Why though?" Double quote. It was hard not to burst out laughing, so we just burst out laughing. When I was young, my dad had big executive job in the music industry. He usually had to travel the majority of the week. So one day when he came home, 3-year-old me asked him, "Daddy, where do you live?" After that he quit and started his own business so he could work from home. I love my dad. A lady called my house once and she had to talk through one of those voice box things for me to hear her. I thought it was my brother's friend pranking, so I kept saying shut up and just talk normal and things like that. I got in a ton of trouble with my mom and felt just terrible about the whole situation. Especially after I found out the lady had cancer. Open bracket. When I was about 5, my dad played racquetball once a week and would have to take me on occasion. One day I walk into a crowded locker room with the usual older gentlemen sitting around naked talking. I went up to my dad, pointed at a guy, and asked my dad very sincerely, "Why does that man have such a small peepee?" The whole locker room got very quiet and my dad's face turned beet red. He found me a babysitter from then on. I was walking my dog in my neighborhood when a young kid, prob around 10, on a bike comes up behind me and just says, "How old are you?" I reply that I am 22. And he immediately asks, "How many children do you have?" I tell him I have none. And he responds, "You must be a miserable old man," and then quickly pedals away. Jackass. 7-year-old kid at a family party pretending to be Superman. Coming up behind people and attempting to lift them up on his shoulders by putting his head between their legs. All play along jokingly, feigning fear of being up so high. Kid comes up behind grandma and sticks his head under her skirt to lift her. Backs out quickly, announcing, "Wow. Vagina breath." True story. My 5-year-old son caught me crying this week after we got the news that our 11-year-old chocolate lab had cancer and needed to be put down. He asked me why I was sad and I explained that Casey was sick and would die soon. His answer: It's okay daddy, don't be sad, we can just buy another dog. My neighbor's kid comes over all the time. We were having troubles with our cloth diapers and as a result our house kinda smelled like pee. The neighbor girl, 4, drops this, your house doesn't smell really nice. My house always smells nice because my mommy cleans all the time. You should clean more. I was a little irked because I do clean all the time and aside from the pee smell my house was spotless. I fixed the stinky pee smell and now every time she comes over the kid comments on how my house smells much better. Thanks kid. My 2-year-old son pointed out that I have a small dick. We are teaching him what his penis is and are calling it that. So that way if someone molests him down the road he doesn't say something stupid like he touched my ding dong. We want to know if someone touches his penis. So we are getting out of the shower together. He is wrapped in a towel on the toilet while I dry off. It is very cold and my son says there's daddy's penis. I said yes I have one like you and he says where did it go? Where did it go? I had gone full scared turtle mode from the freezing air. I feel like less of a man now.